All right, let's try and have this discussion now and talking about the COP27 summit. It's a climate summit that has kicked off in Egypt. It started yesterday, and we know that our own President, Cyril Ramaphosa, we understand he has touched down in Egypt. The former executive director of Greenpeace, international and environmental activist, Kumi Naidoo, is on the line now, and he joins us to give us his thoughts as the world leaders descend on Egypt. Kumi, good morning to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's begin this conversation with COP26. What were the commitments there? What has been met and what has not?
So one of the big commitments made at COP26 in Glasgow last year with relation to South Africa was a significant 8.5 billion package to help South Africa transition off coal and to move more aggressively in the direction of clean renewable energies. This has sadly not been put in place yet. It's still in discussion. There's much debate, and we can go into that in a second. But overall, the main commitment was that we would seriously stay below 1.5 degrees. And just for those viewers who don't understand what that figure means, what simply it means is that ever since the Industrial Revolution, when people started burning oil, coal, and gas, from that moment into the future, the science says we can't have more than 1.5 degrees of warming. Now already we're at 1.2 degrees of warming. And even at 1.2, we see the kinds of disasters we had in Durban in April and so on. So the big push is to get the ambition to bring it down, because if you take all that was put together in Glasgow, we are talking already about a 2.7 degree world. So we have to get ambitions to rise very quickly. Not emissions to rise, but ambitions to rise to reduce. The other main issue is money. And the two big things we're pushing for is that the original commitment for $100 billion to be available annually by 2020 for developing countries to help them with mitigation and adaptation. What it means is, rather than doing the same things that rich countries did to develop their economies by using dirty energy, to help poor countries bypass that, they've not delivered that money. And right now, the last thing I would say, a big issue at this COP is the question of loss and damage. You will be hearing a lot of this term loss and damage moving forward. Basically, poor countries are saying, if we didn't contribute to the emissions that are creating the extreme climate events right now, then the costs of that loss and damage should be significantly supported by rich countries. So those are the main issues at the COP this year.
Yeah, and that is perhaps one of the issues that I want to pick up on, because the president has been at pains at the various platforms around the world to say that richer or wealthier countries must stick to those pledges that they make, pledges of money, and you say money is also a very big talking point. We have seen the commitments from the US, from the UK, from Germany. How important is it that these countries stick to this pledge or to these pledges? And what determines, by the way, as to when it is that these pledges will materialize finally into real money?
Firstly, it's critically important that these countries start walking the talk and not making promises that they don't deliver on. It's critically important. Secondly, we must remind these countries, we in the developing world are not asking for charity. The basic fact is that rich countries build their economies on dirty energy that's creating this problem, and they are simply being asked now to pay their climate debt. Okay, so this is not about, and by the way, the only reason that we are even talking about this 8.5 billion amount of money to be given by rich countries to South Africa to help it get off coal, it's because it's in the self-interest of rich countries. That's what people need to understand, that climate change doesn't respect boundaries. So tomorrow, if South Africa does everything right, we became 100% clean energy and so on, but if other countries around the world, even far away from us, are still doing bad things, so rich countries benefit. It's in their self-interest. So what we say to them, they need to show the same kind of political will that they're showing with regard to Ukraine right now. With Ukraine, they seem to be able to find, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I think it's unfair what's happening, it's unjust what's happening to Ukraine. But they can find hundreds of billions of dollars, as they did for the Iraq war and so on. So let me just be very clear to rich nations.
Yeah.
From a civil society perspective, we know that when you have political will, you can mobilize trillions of dollars if necessary. So we expect at this COP to see clear commitments with clear timelines so that what poor countries have been waiting for far too long is made available so we can move forward.
You talk about the Ukraine, and I'm going to latch on to that, but obviously it is the climate element we are looking at. That situation, the war in Ukraine, perpetrated by Russia, as some people hold the view, that has caused countries like Germany, who have made financial commitments to countries like South Africa to say, transition away from coal. But they, on the other hand, are going back to coal. Make sense of that for us.
So basically, the problem that many countries did was they started saying, oh, natural gas is a good transitional, even though it is a fossil fuel, even though it causes climate change, it's less bad than coal. So they've developed a hell of a dependency on Russia in terms of gas. And Russia now is using gas as a bargaining chip. And so they have gone back. It's true, absolutely true. They've gone back to coal. But to be fair, it's not being done as a permanent measure. It's being done as a temporary measure. It smells badly. Let's be blunt about it. And right now, let me say something that will surprise some people. I would say to Germany, if they had an option to run some of the safer nuclear plants for 2 or 3 years, which they are shutting down, rather than go to coal right now, I would think that would be a better option for them to engage in rather than going to coal. Let's be very clear. Despite what the nuclear industry says, nuclear is not carbon-free. Yeah. It's not safe and it's far too expensive. But where you've got functioning plants, that would be a better option than going to coal right now in terms of emissions.
Wow. What do you say, finally, to our country's energy minister who says this country is endowed with years and years of coal supply? How are we to transition away from that when we have so much of this resource?
So I would say to the Minister of Energy, he must seriously wake up and smell the coffee, right? He needs to read what the climate scientists said. So if you have a poison that's killing you, because you have a lot of the poison, do you say, I will continue using this poison even if it's going to kill me? Our people are dying right now from climate impacts. The minister, if the minister needs proof, civil society in our country can provide that to him. So basically, what we are saying to rich countries, though, is because we are not going to exploit those resources like coal that we leave under that's why climate campaigners are saying, leave it in the ground, right? The only basis on which we can get these resources that we are talking about, this 8.5 billion and so on, is on the basis of us saying, okay, we won't do this, but you will have to pay us not to do that. And similarly with forests, we have done it with Indonesia, we're trying to do it in the Congo right now, where we're saying to rich countries, if poor countries commit to protecting their forests, then let's see proper compensation coming from rich countries. If we play our cards right, not in the way Minister Mantashe is doing, his leadership has been pathetic and disappointing and would appear to be vested in supporting the fossil fuel interests rather than supporting a new, more decentralized renewable energy industry.
Kumi Naidoo, let's leave the conversation there. He is a former executive director of Greenpeace International and continues to be an environmental activist.